The GOAT just defeated his toughest test. That's right, Heavy Bag Miocic. UFC 309 just concluded. The dust has settled. Jon Jones has just passed his toughest test of 42-year-old Stipe Miocic, who looks stiff as a board. And it's time for me to break down every single fight on this card. You know what? I have a pretty nuanced take when it comes to the main event, and that's what we're going to get to first. But Joe Rogan, DC, the commentary glazing Jon Jones, his toughest test. I mean, this is unbelievable how he dealt with Stipe. Seriously? Jon Jones's biggest test was Heavy Bag Miocic? Because that's essentially what Stipe was last night. He looked like a heavy bag. And I think a lot of you guys will agree with this. I was shocked. Okay, Jones looked good, but I was shocked at how bad Stipe Miocic looked. There's no reason to sugarcoat it. He looked fucking terrible. He looked so slow and so old. Even when he was walking out, you know, he was stiff as ever. When Bruce Buffer was announcing his name, Stipe looked like one of those planks. You know, you walk the plank in a pirate ship. He looked stiff as one of those planks. Literally the slowest, oldest motherfucker I've ever seen in a UFC title fight. Stipe Miocic. You know, back in the day, at least Glover was in here when he was champion in his 40s. Glover was throwing bombs, good technique. Stipe looked like he had forgot how to throw punches. He was 10 times slower. The weight did not help. And I'm not surprised that Jones beat the fuck out of him, honestly. You know, he had Jon Jones out here looking like a world-class boxer with his jab. And you know what I am going to say, though? I do think Jon Jones looked pretty good. He went out there, took Stipe down with a really slick takedown. And this is the thing. I know people are going to be shitting on Jones because if Jones is taking Stipe into the third round, well, let's keep in mind, Jones has never been a power puncher. He's always been a volume guy. So Jones is never just going to knock someone out in the first round. He damn near finished Stipe in the first round. I was actually, you know, I wanted to see this be a bit of a dogfight. I wanted to see more of Jones's striking. And I was a little bit worried that Jones was going to finish him because I was like, fuck, like, we're going to get Stipe out of there in 5 minutes. And now we still really don't know that much about Jones. But Jones actually looked pretty solid on the feet. Okay? And I actually said a week ago when I was making my breakdown that I think Jon Jones is going to easily outstrike Stipe, at least early, because I was still expecting Stipe to not be as washed as he looked last night. I expected him to be able to at least find his rhythm a little bit, which he couldn't because, you know, he lost his rhythm years ago, it seems. He just doesn't have it anymore. Completely washed up. The only thing he has is that toughness at this point, but really nothing else. He stuffed a couple of takedowns, but listen, I said that Jon Jones actually looked okay on the feet against Gane. He looked kind of fast. He had some slick techniques. And I think the reason why people say Jones is so slow at heavyweight is because they see him plodding around. Jones kind of turned into a bit of a plodder in the early 2020s, late 2010s, 2019 era Jones, Thiago Santos Jones, kind of turned into a bit of a plodder. But when he's actually throwing his kicks, when he's actually throwing his teeps to the midsection, I mean, he's faster than most heavyweights. He's pretty fucking fast for heavyweight. It's classic light heavyweight skill versus the basic and limited heavyweight skill set that we see from Stipe Miocic. Stipe was washed. Jones still pretty good. It's not surprising that he beat the shit out of him, you know? And Jones's grappling is really solid too. We saw that. His jab looked good. His kicks looked good. You know, everyone's saying Jones looked terrible. Not really that bad. I think it's just that everyone's thinking about how he would do against Tom Aspinall if they were to fight on the feet. But as far as I'm concerned, Jones on the feet last night looked better than most heavyweights. Jones last night on the feet is beating the shit out of most heavyweights. Could arguably outstrike the likes of Volkov. I think he could outstrike a fat Tai Tuivasa. I think he could outstrike a guy like, who else are we talking? Who are some other strikers? You know, Robeles de Spain. Jones is outstriking most heavyweights other than maybe a couple. But his grappling is still there. He's still a beast. I saw a guy that was still a beast. I saw a guy that would be willing to stick around for years if it wasn't for Tom Aspinall. Okay? Stipe, again, I cannot sugarcoat this. He looked atrocious. All right? And for Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier to get on the mic, and it was Joe Rogan actually, to say that this was Jones's toughest test. Like, Get out of here with that, man. Who are you trying to fool? The entire buildup was about this not being a Tom Aspinall fight, and it should have been a Tom Aspinall fight. And they're out here saying that Stipe was his toughest test after looking at the version of Stipe that showed up. That's a disgrace, man. Stipe hung him up. He hung up the gloves. It's a tough way to go out like that, man. It's a real tough way to go out like that. But my goodness, this was a layup for Jones. But he looked good. I thought he looked really good. His grappling, again, damn near finished Stipe in the first round. I mean, think about all the other heavyweights. He's probably finishing most of them in the first round on the ground. And if he's in a striking battle, again, there aren't many heavyweights that have that sort of striking arsenal. There aren't many heavyweights. Think about how many light heavyweights are getting pieced up by a Jon Jones jab. Not many, but it's happening at heavyweight because, again, these guys are slow. These guys are stiff, right? He still has the oblique kicks. He's got the spinning back kicks. He's got the nasty front kicks to the body. Jones at heavyweight is no longer just some stiff guy. Towards the end of his light heavyweight career, he started getting a little more stiff, started getting a little more slow, had those closer battles with Santos, Reyes, who I thought beat Jon Jones. But now that he's fighting slower guys, it's like everything's a little bit more normal these days. Jones still looks like a really good striker. But everyone wants to know, will he fight Tom Aspinall? And will he beat Tom Aspinall? Well, I don't think he will. I think Jon Jones is, he got on the mic and he didn't want to get booed because he knew that there was about to be an eruption of boos if he said that he didn't want to fight Aspinall. But he doesn't want to retire, which means that he's still open to fighting guys like Alex Pereira. And he's open to fighting Tom Aspinall if the UFC just opens the checkbook and adds a couple more zeros. Okay? That's what I took away from it. I think that Jones is going to do the classic, listen, the UFC, you want me to fight this guy like he did with Ngannou? Pay me more. Because back in the day, he was saying when he was supposed to fight Ngannou and everyone wanted him to fight Ngannou after Ngannou knocked out Stipe, he was telling the world that, listen, this is a really risky fight. I just want to be fairly compensated. Add another couple zeros, right? I think that's what he's going to do, and I don't think the UFC is going to add a couple more zeros or another zero. If they do, maybe we'll actually see it, and I would love to see it, but I don't think they will, and I think that he's still kind of leaving it open because I think he'd want to fight Alex Pereira, maybe even move down to a lighter weight class, light heavyweight. But I still think that the chances of fighting Aspinall are slim to none. I don't think he wants to fight Tom. But let's talk about how he would do against Tom, because I think a lot of people are doing this MMA math. Oh, he took Stipe into the third round. Well, yeah, Stipe was old, Stipe was washed, but Jon Jones has never been a guy that really finishes people that early. He's always been someone that sort of beats the shit out of people with volume. He's a volume guy, right? He's a volume guy, and he didn't really attempt that many takedowns in the second and third round. Again, that takedown that he got on Stipe in the first round was very slick. I think if he really went after that takedown hard in the second and third, which I don't think he did because he felt comfortable on the feet with Stipe being that old and that stiff and that lost. But if he really went for it, I think he could have gotten him down and finished him. Is he going to be able to beat the shit out of Tom Aspinall like that? I don't think so. Not on the feet. I still think Tom Aspinall, as long as it's on the feet with Jon Jones, he's not going to feel threatened by Jones's power, by Jones's jab, right? Jones's teeps to the midsection may not be so great. You can't take too many of those. You can't take too many leg kicks, but I don't think Tom Aspinall is just going to be sitting at range when Stipe's closing the distance, with a stiff little punch, and Jon Jones is running out. Jon Jones is running out. He's kind of laughing at Stipe. Stipe's behind him. He's kind of laughing at him. Tom Aspinall, man. Tom Aspinall's closing down the distance and blitzkrieging you straight down the middle with a slick 1-2, and he's catching Jon Jones. And he's, again, it's not a chin thing. We said Francis Ngannou had a good chin back in the day. There's a million guys that have good chins. Max Holloway, best chin in UFC history. You fight someone that has that type of KO power that Aspinall, Topuria, or Anthony Joshua has in boxing, for example, your chin can be the best in the world. If they catch you in the right spot, you're going to go down. And I think Tom Aspinall would send Jon Jones flying across the octagon if they were to strike on the feet. But even though Aspinall's big and he's athletic, Jon Jones is crafty and he's got light heavyweight skill. And I'm not ready to say that Aspinall has like a 100% chance to beat him because I don't think that's the case. I think if Jon Jones can take down Aspinall with one of those crafty techniques that Aspinall isn't ready for, like the one he got Stipe down with, Aspinall's a stronger guy and whatnot, but still, you're at heavyweight, you can get toppled over. It's kind of, this is the thing. If you've trained with heavyweights, you kind of know this. It might be hard to budge them over with a takedown, but you can kind of topple them. You can kind of topple them, use their weight against them. Jones could topple him over. And if Jones gets down Aspinall, yeah, fair enough. Aspinall has this long history of doing jiu-jitsu, and that was his first martial art, and he's twisted people into pretzels. But he's a heavyweight, and he'd be on his back. Okay? And at the end of the day, we didn't really see Jon Jones go for submissions on Stipe. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, that's because you didn't want him, man. He wanted to TKO him. But, Jones could still submit Tom Aspinall, and he could still TKO him on the ground. Jones is still a phenomenal grappler, and Aspinall, I don't care how good he is offensively in the grappling, we've never seen him have to defend off of his back, especially against a guy like Jon Jones with his experience. So I actually still think it's a winnable fight for Jon Jones. Who would I pick? I'd pick Tom Aspinall. I think that Aspinall would shuck off Jones's takedowns. I think he would have no fear on the feet, and I think he would knock him out. I think he would send him flying back with a classic Aspinall 1-2, a clobbering right hand. And again, I think that people saying, for example, Jones looks terrible, therefore Aspinall beats him, I think a lot of them are just saying he looks terrible because they want to say Aspinall beats him. But I think Jones looked good, and I still think Aspinall beats him. Jones, with his striking arsenal, his light heavyweight striking arsenal, right, the kicks, with the grappling, this version of Jon Jones, if Aspinall is not in the division, I think he beats damn near everybody. I think he'd probably take down Sergey Pavlovich. I think we saw what he did to Gon, who's already at a top 3 heavyweight. What, Volkov's going to beat him? I don't think so. Volkov with his crazy KO power and his, next level brick wall takedown defense. Jones is still really good. Excellent. But Aspinall is a totally different beast. He's one of a kind. We've never seen anything like him. He's insanely fast on the feet. If Stipe's cracking you with these old man uppercuts, if Stipe's running after you and closing the distance every now and then with his stiff punch, as stiff as a board, slow as a freaking tortoise, Aspinall's landing the big right hand. And he's landing it. Aspinall's not throwing big, ugly overhands like a sack of potatoes. He's throwing slick right hands down the middle. He got caught a couple times against Curtis Blades, but it's Curtis Blades. He's got some power. I think he's the guy to KO Jones. But will Jones fight him? I don't think so. I don't think Jones is going to fight him. Again, I've said this all along. I don't think Jones should feel obligated to stick around. And as DC said this week, a lot of people want champions to go out on their back. If Jones had just said, for example, listen, this is the last one. It's going to be 2 old heads, 2 legends going at it, me and Stipe, and then we're going to ride off into the sunset. But Aspinall's great. He's excellent. He's dangerous. Then I think none of us or a lot of us wouldn't have been calling him a duck all week, right? But it's when he started saying Aspinall has done nothing, and he's an asshole, I don't want to fight him. That's just when it starts getting pathetic, okay? Because Aspinall has done something. He's won an interim belt. He's defended it. He's basically beaten every single dangerous guy in the top 10, all but one, and Gon, who he probably would beat. And Jon Jones is saying he doesn't deserve a title shot when he's the interim champ, which is ridiculous, of course. But yeah, Jones, I don't think is going to stick around. I think that we might get a really unfortunate situation where Jones is negotiating with the UFC and it takes forever, and Tom Aspinall gets antsy and wants to fight, and he goes out there and fights for another interim belt, which at that point, listen, this is why I sometimes say that these title wins aren't the end-all be-all. You're beating top 10 guys, you're beating top 5 guys. That's as good as a title win, as far as I'm concerned, beating a Sergey Pavlovich. That's a better win than this version of Stipe Miocic. It just is. I don't care if Stipe is one of the GOATs. At this point, you look at how Stipe looked. This win, it bumps Jon Jones up just a centimeter on the GOAT list. He goes up a centimeter. Volk is still there, man. Volk's still freaking climbing up, but you get my point. Jon Jones might create a logjam, and we might not get a heavyweight title fight for a while. An undisputed title fight, unless the UFC just tells him instantly, listen, we're not going to pay you $5 extra million. You're either going to fight Tom Aspinall or that's it, because we're not doing any of these shenanigans at heavyweight. You're going to have to leave the division, and maybe Jon Jones will leave the division. That's not going to be a great look on him, but Aspinall should fight for the belt next, and I would pick him to beat Jon Jones. But I still think Jones looked good. And I think a lot of you guys would agree with that. A lot of people saying Jones looked like shit. I don't think so. I don't think he looked like shit. But yeah, it's time that Tom Aspinall fights for the belt. And Stipe, man, I was surprised. I thought Stipe was at least going to have a fraction of the speed that he had against Daniel Cormier in the trilogy. He looked like he had lost all of it completely. Washed up Miocic versus light heavyweight skill Jon Jones. That's what we kind of expected, right? We just expected a slightly better version of Stipe Miocic. But let's get on to Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. Charles Oliveira had a masterclass on Michael Chandler, just a masterclass. Some people are saying he's the lightweight GOAT, man. You gotta admit it now. It's the second time he's beat Michael Chandler, and don't get me wrong, Michael Chandler is a tough guy to beat, but he's Michael Chandler. He's 2-3 going into last night's fight. Now he's 2-4. It's not exactly a win that's gonna all of a sudden have you leapfrog Makhachev, leapfrog Khabib. It was a good win from Charles Oliveira. He looked phenomenal. 5th round, things got hairy. That's just Michael Chandler when he lets it all go and goes balls to the wall and looks for the KO. I was really worried that they were going to stop that fight. Back of the head shots from Michael Chandler, by the way, 20 of them. I don't know how the ref didn't call that out, but there were many back of the head shots. I don't know how Charles didn't go out, to be honest, because he was already rocked. And then at the end of the fight, Chandler is standing up and throwing Charles Oliveira on his back. That was a really entertaining round. But the majority of this fight was Charles Oliveira dominating Michael Chandler, marching him down, pressuring him, and patient Chandler just didn't fight that well. And I think I talked about this. I think I said, Michael Chandler, if he tries to fight patient, he's not going to do that well. Because again, what brought you to the dance? What got you to this level? What has given you success against the likes of Poirier and Gaethje in those fights? It's when he's wild. And I said, if Michael Chandler tries to come in here super patient, he's just not used to doing that. He's not going to win one of those tit-for-tat battles with a guy like Charles Oliveira, and we saw that. Oliveira, great front kicks to the midsection, excellent leg kicks. He was damaging the leg of Michael Chandler. He was stomping on his knee as well. And then when he had him up against the cage, he was just kind of picking Michael Chandler apart with uppercuts, with good right hands, and he would close the distance. And what I was really impressed with was how easy it was for Charles to take down Chandler. He was effortlessly taking him down, throwing him around, taking his back like it was nothing. And it just kind of went to show that I don't know if Chandler's getting a little bit old or if he's just not used to people shooting on him and he just assumes he has that brick wall takedown defense because he can offensively wrestle and he's a juggernaut. But we don't really see people shoot on him that often because, again, he has that sort of mystique of you're not going to get the takedown. It's impossible on a brick wall like Michael Chandler. Charles Oliveira was taking him down like it was nothing. And Oliveira is a big lightweight. He's a strong lightweight, but still, it was very impressive to see. And, took Chandler's back a couple times. It's hard to choke these guys like Michael Chandler, these sort of stocky, shorter guys. Right? It is difficult to choke them. But yeah, he held him on the ground in the first round. The fans started booing. They were in a weird position where Charles Oliveira couldn't really get his leg free. Michael Chandler did a really good job of blocking Oliveira's leg so that he couldn't get mount and couldn't get his back. But in the second round, Oliveira took him down, mounted him, elbowed him a bunch of times. Had a close to a 10-8 round. And third round, same thing. Fourth round, same thing. Took his back, beat him up on the feet a little bit. And then in the fifth round, Chandler finally decides to go out there and impose his will like a madman, and he finally wins the round. And that's the thing. I think Chandler should have fought super aggressive. And I still would have picked Oliveira because I think Oliveira can, in those firefights, still find those moments because Chandler in those firefights, he just throws defense out completely and will leave himself open a lot, whereas Oliveira will still have a high guard and he can find those moments. But if Chandler's rocking Oliveira in the first round and damn near finishing him, fair enough. They were back of the head shots. That was a little bit, those were terrible. But, what does Michael Chandler in the first round with all the energy in the world do if he fights like he did in the fifth? I'm not saying he wins the fight. I'm just saying he probably would have had more success in this fight and would have had a better chance to win it. Because, again, damn near finished Oliveira in the fifth despite getting his back taken and having the body lock put on him multiple times. Body triangle, rather. But listen, Chandler looked okay, but Oliveira just proved that he's better than him. He's a better striker. He's a better grappler. And, just a cleaner fighter. Still dangerous, very technical. His defense looked good. There were, outside of the 5th round, there were many moments where Chandler was throwing his big bombs, but again, he wasn't really following up. He was just looking for one big shot. And Oliveira would slip it, counter effortlessly. So, yeah, this was, I don't necessarily know if this is the best version of Oliveira we've ever seen. I think Oliveira is still very good. It's just that he took a drop off in competition, right? Because even though Chandler's been dangerous, I don't think he fought as best as he could. And still, even if he did fight okay, he's not necessarily known for being like Arman level, Islam level. So Oliveira is still holding it down, proving that he's not going anywhere and that he's still able to dominate dangerous lightweights, and that the only real competition for him is going to be, again, those top 3 guys. Those are the only ones that are really going to test him, okay? But yeah, I thought it was a really solid performance. I know the fans were booing Oliveira when he was trying to get Chandler down in the 5th because they just wanted to see him stand and bang, but I was happy that he didn't. I kind of wanted Oliveira to win this fight. I'm a fan of Michael Chandler too. Sucks that he lost, and he called out Conor McGregor after. It's like, what are you doing? You didn't get that fight, and McGregor has kind of wasted your time for the last 2 years. Now you're calling him out again. I don't know. That was just, and then Max Holloway too. I don't think we're going to see that fight. I think Max Holloway and Oliveira is actually the fight to make. Rogan said that Oliveira has undoubtedly earned a title shot. I don't know, because it's Arman and it's Islam. And then after that, I think Makhachev's going to move up to welterweight. Okay? Like, at some point he wants to move up. I think it's probably going to be after his 4th title defense when he breaks the record. So maybe Charles Oliveira and Max Holloway for a number 1 contenders fight, and whoever wins that will fight whoever else doing really well at the time. But yeah, solid performance from Charles. Excellent grappling, patient striking. Let's get on to this one. I picked Bo Nickal by a close decision, but I thought that we were going to see some grappling in this fight. And the first thing I have to say is Bo Nickal, I think people's expectations are too high, right? We got to remember he's only 6-0. But that being said, I think people are upset for the reason that he's being put on these main card spots, right? And he's not delivering. He's not giving us the big KO viral moments that the UFC wants him to deliver, that the fans are expecting. Okay, you're going to put Bo Nickal on the main card. He better finish Paul Craig, who's got no striking, who's got no boxing. Outside of the body kicks, Paul Craig has no striking. And this is another thing. It's not only on Bo Nickal. Paul Craig did fuck all in this fight either. Okay? I don't think I saw him throw one fucking punch. And I don't think he shot a takedown either. And it's like, okay, well, I know that Bo Nickal's got this really good wrestling, but I mean, did Paul Craig even try to win this fight? At least Bo Nickal was trying to knock Craig out on the feet, right? I think Bo Nickal won this fight because he tried to do a little bit more. Paul Craig was too concerned with not getting finished and not getting blown out of the water. He was sort of flapping his gums at Bo Nickal in the middle of the fight, egging him on a little bit. But I think he sort of lost, I think he sort of lost it in the middle of the fight and just stopped trying to fucking get Bo Nickal out of there. He did nothing to try to finish this fight. So Paul Craig, what the fuck were you doing? All right. Like, third round, it's good. I think he was maybe trying to win a little pitter-pat, patty-whap decision. But either way, let's get to Bo Nickal's performance. Listen, Bo Nickal, he's okay, right? He's 6-0, 7-0 now. I would have loved to have seen a takedown, right? I mean, he really respected Paul Craig's grappling, just like Paul Craig respected his grappling, but why not just go for one in the third round? Last 10 seconds, last 30 seconds, go for a big slam takedown. You've got this next level wrestling that he's always talking about. Why not just show out for the fans in a couple of moments? I think that those moments, if he just got a couple of really slick takedowns on Paul Craig, I think that would have made his performance look a lot better. But as far as his striking is concerned, I mean, he outstruck Paul Craig. I don't think Paul Craig won this fight, only slightly. And he outstruck him just based on doing a tiny bit more. Paul Craig, the only thing he was doing was throwing body kicks, and that was it. Bo Nickal was hitting him with right hands to the body, trying to go for an overhand up top. Landed a couple bombs on Paul Craig, couldn't put him away. So I don't think Bo Nickal has this like next level power, but he still looks really green on the feet. Still looks incredibly green on the feet. And I think if the UFC doesn't push him slowly, if they don't give him the O'Malley treatment early, which is, fighting guys like Moutinho and fighting guys like Paiva, I think he's going to get finished, or I think he's going to get beat very soon, Because, again, Paul Craig may have some dangerous triangles, but there are some other good grapplers in this division, like Cal Baraujo, that are going to be dangerous. Mavov's pretty good on the ground. Brendan Allen. There's a lot of decent grapplers at middleweight nowadays. Anthony Hernandez. And, Bo Nickal, he's this next-level wrestler. You know what I have to say? I think that there was I think we got to talk about the mindset of Bo Nickal. You're coming into the UFC as this highly decorated wrestler, and the threat of an old crafty vet's triangle was enough to dissuade him from taking him down. I could not see Khabib, for example, doing that. I couldn't see Khamzat doing that. I'm just talking about some other dominant wrestlers. Daniel Cormier, Jon Jones. I'm just bringing up like some highly competitive UFC legends that are really dominant on the ground. I wouldn't see any of these guys shying away from going for takedowns. Bo Nickal shied away. I thought that honestly seems like a really big mental defeat, right? He's worried to take down Paul Craig. Again, that's a dangerous guy. He thought he could knock him out on the feet, but Khabib is not going to be standing and banging only with someone. He's going to be saying, you know what? Fuck this guy's wrestling. I'm the best grappler on the planet. I'm going after this guy, and I'm beating his ass. Okay? Jon Jones, back in the day, against decent grapplers, he was going after them. He was trying to take down DC. All right? Khamzat Chimaev, screw Kamaru Usman's wrestling defense. Screw Robert Whittaker's triangle. I know these guys don't have great submissions off their back, but he's going after them. He doesn't care about their takedown defense. Some fighters will get in there with someone that has quote-unquote good takedown defense. The fans talk about it. The analysts talk about it. And they won't shoot on them. They'll give them a lot of respect. The fighters that do, the fighters that say, fuck it, I'm shooting on this guy, I'm imposing my will, those fighters usually have that like championship mentality. And it's very clear. And I'm not saying Bo Nickal can't become a champ, but what I'm saying is that, to me, seemed like a mental defeat. That, to me, seemed like a weakness. It seemed like, okay, I know this is going to sound really cringy, guys, but where's the Mamba mentality, bro? All right, hey! I know it's going to sound cringy, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. I thought Bo Nickal was going to be this guy that, had this next level confidence in his wrestling to where he can go out there and topple over Paul Craig. At least just pick him up and throw him down a couple times, right? I mean, I could do that against Paul Craig. I'm joking, but I thought we saw a little bit of a retreat in Bo Nickal's mindset. And again, his striking, it looked better than Paul Craig's because he seemed like the only guy capable of doing any real damage. The only guy that was capable of being dangerous on the feet was indeed Bo Nickal. But if you actually just look at the result, decision with Paul Craig not throwing any punches. It's like Stipe Miocic was a heavy bag, right? Stipe Miocic was a slow, heavy bag last night. Paul Craig was a AI martial arts dummy with no arms, capable of doing one move only, and that was a body kick. And again, I think that it's not the best sign. This was not a good look, right? I know that a lot of people are saying Bo Nickal looked like shit, but I can't really praise this performance that much. I know Paul Craig has a lot. The only thing that saves him is that he doesn't have a lot of experience. He's still young. He doesn't have a lot of experience. He can get better, but you really got to push him slowly. But man, decision with a guy that's only throwing body kicks and not shooting a single takedown with his wrestling background, I didn't see that fire in him like I needed to. I know this is, again, we're talking about mentality right now, but that's a big part of the fight game. That's in part why Merab Dvalishvili is a champion. That's in part why Jon Jones has been so good throughout his career, because he attacks people where they're at their best, and he really challenges them as a competitor in that regard. And I didn't really see that from Bo. I saw a guy that was timid. I saw a guy that was green. Yeah, I'd be happy to train with the guy. I'd be happy to train with him. Me and Magomed could help him out. But all jokes aside, his striking is okay. His striking is all right. But again, that still looks green as well. Very green. And the middleweight division is stacked these days. Paul Craig was one of the easier guys to fight on the feet. Dangerous on the ground. Hey. I understand why Bo Nickal didn't go for the takedown. But what I am saying is, a future Khabib, a future Daniel Cormier, a future Khamzat Chimaev, a future legend of the sport, champion, wrestler, is going for the fucking takedown on Paul Craig. That's all I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And I think a lot of you guys will agree with that. That speaks to the mentality of Bo. It speaks to the mentality of, this guy's dangerous for me on the ground. I got to avoid that. Khabib's not doing that stuff, man. Anthony Hernandez isn't doing that. So, what's next for Bo? I think it's time that maybe we put him on a main event of a fight night. No, I think that's actually too far. That's actually too far. I think it's time that we put him on a main card for a fight night. Big fight night, one of those stacked fight nights. I don't care where it is. Put him out there in Abu Dhabi or something on a Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi type of fight night. Give him the opening of a card against some kind of test. Some guy from Dagestan, right? Put him out there, brother. And I want to see him take him down. That's the thing, though. If Khamzat Chimaev were to fight a guy with Bo Nickal accolades, he's running across the octagon. He's trying to take him down instantly. Okay? If Bo Nickal gets in the cage with Albert Duraev, does he attempt a takedown on him? I don't know, man. At this point, I know Paul Craig is known for having those submissions. And Paul Craig is dangerous. But again, that could speak to where Bo Nickal thinks he is. He might not be. He might know he's not at that crazy level. He might know from training with good submission artists that I'm not ready for that yet. So what I saw tonight was a very green Bo Nickal who needs to be put on the slow path. And we should not be rushing this guy. And I don't think, the UFC should be talking about him as a superstar, because, this guy's Bo Nickal is as American as apple pie, okay? Bo Nickal is as American as it gets. And he's in New York, and he's getting booed. And he's fighting Paul Craig, who, bedtime calls him a jabron. And Paul Craig's a bit of a jabron, man. I love Paul Craig. He's a boy of mine. We're real close friends. And listen, dude, we could talk about training with Magomed. Paul Craig knows I took him down a couple times, brother. But listen, this guy was getting booed in Madison Square Garden, okay? Like he was Paddy Pimblett after Paddy Pimblett had his fight with Jared Gordon. That's what it seemed like, right? And Bo, again, Bo's very new to the fight game, so he may have been in there thinking, man, I'm having a fucking banger fight with this guy. Because, again, he's not very experienced. Bo Nickal's training with the Pennsylvania State Wrestling guys, and these guys are throwing a jab and a right hand, and that's the extent of the sparring matches. He's not used to getting in there with Cal Barao. He's not used to getting in there with Vicente Luque, right? I think Bo needs to go down to a real MMA gym. Seriously, though. Maybe go to one of these other MMA gyms to get some different sparring going on. But either way, listen, I'm joking around a little bit, but he's getting booed in Madison Square Garden. I'm not saying they should put him on the early prelims of a fight night or anything like that, but give him like the main event, or not a main, give him like the highest spot on the prelims of a huge pay-per-view, or because they put this guy on UFC 300 as well. Or put him on a really, really stacked fight night and give him like co-main event spot against. But that's the issue, though. That's the issue. Where Bo Nickal is right now, the level that he's at, he cannot fight like a really hyped up fighter that fans actually care that much about. So I would understand, it's Bo Nickal versus Brendan Allen. I know Brendan Allen's not that hype, but at least a lot of the hardcore fans know who he is. You're not even going to do that yet. You're going to do Bo Nickal versus this guy that we haven't heard about for years, Tricoli. We're going to do Bo Nickal versus Tricoli. Like, you just can't put that as a co-main event on a huge fight night either. So that's the weird part, right? I guess they'll give him a slight bump up. I don't know who they're going to give him, but slow for Bo Nickal. Slow. Okay? Viviana Arahu, Karine Silva. This is a great battle, honestly. I picked Karine Silva. I think a lot of us picked Karine Silva because she's the up-and-comer. But Viviana Arahu got it done. Excellent finish from Viviana Arahu. Or was it a decision? It was a decision. This is a great fight. Some people were saying it's a fraud check, I'd imagine. Some people were saying it's a fraud check. I just think James Llontop is really fucking tough. Credit to James Llontop because he was getting an O'Malley type of beating. You know how O'Malley used to beat guys up on the prelims? He wasn't necessarily Chris Moutinhoing everyone with like 200 strikes, avalanche type of performances, but O'Malley was doing he'd be patient, he'd crack you with a right hand, and he'd drop you, and, everything he would land would fuck you up, and it would be like highlight worthy. Mauricio Ruffy was patient. He was doing the highlight worthy type of performance where everything he was landing was like a slick right hand, dropping James Llontop, spinning his head back like an owl. Credit to James Llontop because when you're in those type of fights, mentally, it's easy, and I'd imagine this is the case. It's easy to just kind of think you're outmatched, and you're really fucked at that point. But this guy, James Llontop from Peru, is a savage. This guy is tough as nails. He continued to push the pace no matter what, no matter how bad it got for him. He continued to push the pace, super gritty. And then in the third round, he easily won the third round, just fucking marching down Mauricio Ruffy and beating him up against the cage. I will say this, he did seem like he had a size advantage because, of course, he took this on short notice. They had to move it up to 165, and Mauricio Ruffy had a whole training camp. He was very lean. James Llontop seemed, I'm forgetting how to say this guy's last name. He seemed like he, had a lot more mass on him in the cage, and that could have done wonders for his gas tank. Mauricio Ruffy got tough, but again, part of it was because of how tough James Llontop was. All right. Was it in some way a fraud check? I mean, against a guy that's relatively unknown like James Llontop, who might go on to have like a Basil Hoffus type of career where he has a really good showcase early on in his career and everyone's like, whoa, this guy's a bad man, right? And then he kind of fizzles out immediately after. That could happen, and that's probably what will happen. But either way, Mauricio Ruffy, I think we expected him to dominate and get a KO. But he damn near did. And I think most fighters getting hit with the type of shots that Mauricio Ruffy was hitting James with, the uppercut, the right hand, I think most guys are going down, okay? But, maybe he just fell short of our expectations just a tiny bit, especially in the third round. It's like he took the majority of the third round off a little bit. He was gassed. He was tired. It's not like he took it off because he just wanted to. But even in like the last minute, he barely did anything in the fourth round. Llontop was just marching him down, beating him up. And I wanted to see some effort, in the closing of that round. Just some combinations. And we really didn't see a lot of it. So his gas tank, like McGregor, we always compare him to McGregor, is also not very good, okay? So I guess the McGregor comparisons are still pretty good. Maybe this is just how Conor McGregor in the modern era does when rising through the ranks. It's harder these days, rising through the ranks. James Llontop is going to give McGregor issues. But either way, Mauricio Ruffy still looks like a beast. He's still really solid on the feet. He's still going to knock a lot of guys out. He's still, again, he's very new to the UFC. But again, that gas tank is really worrisome because he's not the highest output guy. He doesn't have a ton of output, and he still got very tired. That's a little worrisome, right? Because if he doesn't knock you out and we have a guy that's higher level than Llontop, maybe close to his toughness, that could be a real issue for Mauricio Ruffy. So we learned a lot in this fight. But I'm not ready to just say Mauricio Ruffy can't make the rankings in the future and can't do really well. Again, we'll see how James Llontop does. I can't wait to see his next fight. I know he's taken a couple of L's, but the UFC should keep him around because, he's a dog. And we need more fighters like this that are constantly pressing the action. He's the definition of imposing your will. James Llontop, the definition of imposing your will. We saw that from him. So credit to both guys. I think they both had a great performance, honestly. Now, this one surprised me. I picked Jonathan Martinez to beat Marcus McGhee because he did all right against Aldo. And Marcus McGhee has been fighting these super low-level guys, but you know what? It was the hand speed that made the big difference. Martinez brought out the leg kicks again, proved once again why we say he has the best leg kicks in the lower weight classes. I still think he should have thrown more of them, all right? And maybe a couple of body kicks or head kicks. I feel like, you're landing all these leg kicks, and Marcus McGhee is focusing on that, and his hands are kind of low. Why not throw a head kick if you've got that insane power with every single kick that you throw, or a body kick, right? I think mixing it up would have helped him a little bit more. I think he could be a much more devastating fighter if he did that. But outside of the leg kicks, we didn't really see a whole lot from Jonathan Martinez. Marcus McGhee just outboxed him, just faster than him. And I knew Marcus McGhee was going to be a little bit faster, but again, just the idea of Martinez and Aldo kind of having a close decision, I was thinking, man, if he's going to have it wasn't that close, but if he's going to be in there with Aldo, I think he'll be good enough to beat the poor man's Aldo. But Marcus McGhee, of course he's maybe not Aldo level at this point, but despite him being a little bit old for a bantamweight, he's pretty fast. He's probably as fast as Aldo when it comes to his hand speed. And again, we kind of slept on that a little bit because Martinez had that close fight with Aldo, right? Wasn't that close again, but still. It was just a huge bump up in competition. But, man, the hand speed of Marcus McGhee won him this fight. I think he's one of the best boxers in this division. That's clear. And he had a really good performance. Jonathan Martinez, he's got to find a way to weaponize those leg kicks even more because they're that devastating. I think, honestly, all he needs to do is just spam them. Just literally spam leg kicks and then every once in a while throw a head kick. Because his boxing's never been that good. He's not like a super dominant grappler. If he's stumbling and bumbling everyone with the leg kicks, I want to see what a head kick does, So, good fight. Credit to Marcus McGhee. Proved a lot of people wrong. Let's get on to the next one. Jim Miller, Damon Jackson. Just a really good showcase from the crafty vet. Number 27 for Jim Miller. 27-0. Miller, 27-0, closing in on that Khabib 29-0. Gets the submission in the first round. I think I picked Jim Miller to win this either via knockout or a submission. I didn't pick first round submission by guillotine, but he got it done first round. There's not a whole lot to talk about it other than Jim Miller still dangerous and still extremely crafty, still very crafty, and has a nasty submission game. So a great win from Jim Miller. Shout out to him. A UFC legend. David Onama, Roberto Romero. Excellent fight. Roberto Romero was doing really well in this fight as well. He had a good performance, just a gritty battle, but David Onama edges it out by decision. David Onama, honestly, always for sure entertaining fighter. Marcin Tybura, man. Woohoo! I mean, he's gotten even better. He's gotten even better. I can't believe it. But Marcin Tybura had a fucking real man's performance, bro. And when I say that, I'm just saying opposed to the NPC heavyweight type of performance. Marcin Tybura, you got to give it to him. He is the only heavyweight to ever break out of the Apex that lived in the Apex. Okay? Because remember, there was always those guys, they're at the Apex, they're cryogenically frozen. Marcin Tybura was low-key. Not a lot of people were noticing, but he was racking up those finishes every once in a while. And then he finally had his moment against Tai Tuivasa, submitted him. And look at him now. He's living in Poland. He's actually able to go out and do things. He's happy. And, as they say, a happy fighter is a dangerous fighter. Right? A well-fed fighter is a dangerous fighter. And Marcin Tybura beat the shit out of Jonathan Deniz with elbows. Just nasty stuff. Jonathan Denise cracked him a couple times, but Marcin Tybura's grappling, underrated. Tom Aspinall's win, by the way, aging pretty well. Marcin Tybura might go on to be one of the best gatekeepers in heavyweight history, honestly. Like, Marcin Tybura is one of my favorite heavyweights. He's actually dangerous on the ground. You cannot ever tell me that this is not a dangerous man at heavyweight. He's actually one of the dangerous heavyweights. Nasty ground and pound from this guy. Right? Carl Williams wasn't able to do shit to Jonathan Denise, and he's a good wrestler. Marcin Tybura took him down effortlessly and just beat the shit out of him. Nasty elbows, and he gets a TKO. Another legit win for Marcin Tybura. You know what I mean? You can't say anything other than that. A legit win, an entertaining win. No wonder this guy's not in the Apex anymore. Okay, so shout out to Marcin Tybura. One of my favorite fighters. Let's get on to this one. Ramiz Brahimaj stepped up big time against Mickey Gall, knocked him out in his hometown. He was having a rough UFC career, but this one, he really looked improved. Brutal KO shot. I think it was like a two-punch combination, catching Mickey Gall with the right hook right behind whatever first punch he landed. And whatever first, must have been the other punch. You get my point, though. Nasty finish. Follow-up shots up against the fence. And Ramiz Brahimaj looking pretty good. Tough for Mickey Gall, though. Tough for Mickey Gall. Basil Hoffus. No, I picked Mickey Gall, by the way. And I also picked Basil Hoffus. And I picked both of them because they had gritty battles with each. They actually fought each other before, and they had a gritty fight. They were tough. They proved toughness. And I was like, man, Mickey Gall's tough. He's going to win this fight. He's not getting KO'd. He's tough. Basil Hoffus, man, he's going to impose his will. Basil Hoffus's fall off is crazy, man. Like, this guy had a great fight against JDM. He pushed JDM. And now he's getting slumped by Oben Elliott. And, his striking is not that great. I would have loved to see some takedown attempts from Basil. I know Oben Elliott's a pretty good grappler. I get that. But again, too much respect. You're getting outpointed on the feet. You're getting stomped in the knee. You're getting stomped in the midsection. Why not go for a takedown on this guy? All right? I think Basil was really just trying to knock him out with that one big punch. But you're watching Basil. It's like, yeah, he's a big dude. And yeah, he hits hard probably. But, not everyone can fight like they're Michael Chandler. All right? And not everyone can fight like they're Francis Ngannou. Okay? And fight wasn't that great, to be honest. But Oben Elliott was winning handily. Wasn't dominating, though, but he was clearly winning. And then in the third round, he catches Basil Hoffus with a nasty right hand and then puts him out cold. It was brutal follow-up shots that we saw. Great win from Oben Elliott. He looked really good. This was his best performance throughout his UFC career. And Basil Hoffus, I kind of feel bad for him because he was on everyone's radar after that JDM fight, but now not so much. So, yeah. And then this one, Veronica Hardy, Eduardo Mora. I thought Veronica Hardy could have won this fight. Eduardo Mora won with the grappling. But 30-27, a couple people gave her 30-27. I thought Veronica Hardy clearly won the third round with the kicks. It was clear that Eduardo Mora was just a lot stronger than Veronica Hardy. And, Veronica Hardy's probably been doing a lot of jiu-jitsu training and all that. But, sometimes someone's just stronger and you can't do shit about that. So that's kind of how it is in WMMA sometimes. Someone's just a little bit stronger and they win because of it. But either way, I think Veronica Hardy still gave Eduardo Mora too much respect. Eduardo was catching Veronica coming in with the right hand every once in a while, stinging her. But I don't think those right hands were, listen, it's Veronica Hardy taking them. It's not a guy taking the right hand. So, it's women's MMA. You got to understand, okay, it affects her, whatever. But still, man, you got to go out there, bro. Fucking, come on. It's Eduardo Mora right hands. What the fuck? You know what I mean? Go after it, man. Freaking throw some combos. But still, I think that the front kicks and the side kicks to the body were pretty good. But, she's a lot faster than Eduardo. I think just biting down on the mouthpiece and just throwing more kicks would have won her this fight. And that's the thing. Sometimes in WMMA, it's one of those things where, you look at the Jon Jones Stipe fight. There's nothing Stipe could have really done other than get a lucky stiff-man, old man punch. But Veronica Hardy throws like 6 more kicks per round. She may have won this fight. But hey, that's how it is. Too much respect for the Eduardo Mora right hand, right? But hey, she must crack pretty hard for WMMA. So good win for Eduardo Mora, breaking Veronica Hardy's win streak. Overall, it was a pretty good card. Unfortunately, you know, as I said, I think Jon Jones looked really good in this fight. It's easy to say he looks slow and stiff, but that's because of the way he plods around. When Jon Jones is throwing his kicks, when Jon Jones is throwing his jab, he doesn't look slow for a heavyweight. Okay, like, who's the average heavyweight? I know I just gave Marcin Tybura a lot of praise for his performance, but, like, what's a Marcin Tybura front kick look like? What does a Marcos Rogerio de Lima front kick look like? Like, come on. Jon Jones looked good on the feet. It's just, when we think about him fighting Tom Aspinall, his long game, the striking volume game over the course of 3-4 rounds, like, he's not got the dangerous ability to throw Aspinall off his game that much. Well, we know Aspinall can just blitzkrieg him with a right hand. And he's got power where he can knock anyone out. I don't care how good your chin is. But I think it was also a little bit of a weird one because Stipe literally looked like a heavy bag last night. Jon Jones was fighting a heavy bag on the feet. So, you know, I think that against better heavyweights like Volkov or I don't know who else, Marcos Rogerio de Lima, like I'm just thinking about random heavyweights. I think Jon Jones would do well on the feet against all these guys, but he would have closer battles, right? There would be competition. There was really nothing coming from Stipe in this fight. And yeah, it was unfortunate that we saw a horrible version of himself. I expected a little bit more from Stipe Miocic. I thought that if this fight we're gonna go into the third, fourth, Stipe was going to do well, but that was assuming that Stipe would at least coming in look a little bit better. The version of himself that showed up, there was nothing he could have done to do well. And it was a really good TKO win from Jon Jones. I don't think he'll fight Tom Aspinall, unfortunately, unless the UFC pays Jon Jones a couple more $1 million. I don't think we're going to see it. But you know what? If Jones does stick around to fight Aspinall, that's probably the biggest heavyweight fight ever. You know, they tried to make it seem like this one was the biggest one ever, but that would be the biggest one ever. You know, they can't fool us saying this was going to be the biggest one ever. But yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time.